Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. So it's been a while since I shot a video. It's been a while since I was in the shop and everything. The last video I think I told you that I quit smoking. Next week I believe will be 6 months. So far that seems to be doing great. Wasn't really the easiest thing on the face of the planet, but I think it was worth it and a good thing to do. So along with that, you know, this is the shop. This is where, you know, I never did smoke in the house. So this is where I used to smoke all the time. And, you know, while I was working on knives and everything. And so quitting smoking, this wasn't the best place for me to be. It's almost like I've had to kind of relearn how to do everything without a cigarette hanging out of my mouth, which, you know, it works pretty good. You know, like let's say you're drilling some holes, or, you know, your hand sanding a handle or something like that, that cigarette hanging out of your mouth, smoke usually goes up, you know, goes up into your face. And, you know, so now I can see better while I'm working. And it's 2 packs a day. That would have been about $300-400 worth of cigarettes a month. So, you know, it's been a cool thing. Anyways, so since this wasn't a good place for me, I ended up doing an awful lot of handymanning again, and I think I'm going to keep doing that. Along with quitting smoking, I got some weight gain. I was up to 240 pounds there at the most about 2 or 3 months ago. So doing the handymanning, that's I've dropped 15 pounds in the last couple of months doing that, and you know, not like serious work, go, but you know, I painted a couple of houses, you know, done some tree work, climbed some, taken some down, cleaning all that up, helped my brother-in-law re-roof his garage, you know, just you know, handymanning, nice and fun, get out and enjoy the fresh air, and lose some weight while I'm at it. So anyway, so I have got the first batch of knives that I'll finish up ready to sharpen. I think this will be the first batch of knives I've done or finished in probably 4 or 5 months. Just some nice simple paring knives. Got some small pairers as sab pattern pairers and a new one. It was an order for a fella. You guys that have got orders in with me, thanks for being so patient. You know, I've had probably 6 guys email me and say, hey, you know, I haven't heard from you, where's my knife? And I said, well, honestly, you know, I hadn't been in the shop, I quit smoking, and every single one of them has been like, dude, take however long it takes, because that's something worth doing, and I really appreciate that. So anyway, so I got that batch of knives ready to start sharpening, right? Well, right before I quit smoking, I was working on finding a different favorite edge. So you guys know that for the longest time, my favorite edge, and one that I think surprises an awful lot of folks, is the 325 grit diamond edge. The 325 grit, as my 2 favorites were DMT and Smith's. They label that as a coarse, but if you use that stone and you create a burr, you move the burr back and forth, weaken it up a little bit, and then shear it with micro bevels, you get a very, very crisp, very aggressive, toothy edge that I love the thing. It's really fast to put on, really fast to touch up. You're not spending hours going through 6 different stones to create a mirror finished edge that the first time you hit a staple, or you know, a staple or a rock, or you know, whatever other, you wreck your edge and then you have to go back and spend another frickin' hour to get a sharp knife again. You know, this was my favorite is the Norton combination crystalon coarse fine. Do all your roughing and your shaping on this, and then go to the DMT 325 or the Smith's and finish your edge off with that. So a real quick 2-stone type setup. Well, what I got to thinking was that Stephen Wolf, he makes some really nice YouTube videos, and he does an awful lot of conditioning and flattening oil stones with SICK powder, silicon carbide, and plate glass. So I got some plate glass and some stick powder and started playing with it. And what I found is that, you know, once you get these stones, you know, either the crystallines or the fine Indias, or you know, a nice Arkansas stone, once you condition those things and you do your maintenance on the stone, they will really surprise you. As far as how well they cut, how fast, and how nice the edges are. You know, I mean, so if you take, imagine, well, I mean, you guys have seen, now the crystalline isn't like this so much because it's a very friable stone for an oil stone. You know, one of the ways that I used to dress these stones right here was I would take, and I've got a video on it, I would take an old worn out file and basically use the corner of the edge of it and rake across the top, stripping the top layer of that stone off, exposing new stone, and then that would cut again. And then you can, you know, scrape your corners and your ends and kind of keep it flat. But mostly like on these. Well, this is a Dan's combination, soft hard 2x8, about 1 inch thick or so. Okay, but you've seen, well, I mean, if you've been to flea markets or been into a shop or anything, you'll have seen old soft Arkansas stones that are so gummed up and nasty that the soft looks like a black. I mean, it's got years and years of oil buildup and metal particles in there and everything, and you try to go to run a stone across those and you're not doing nothing. I mean, that stone is so plugged up that if it's actually abrading anything, it's through sheer luck, because the stone's plugged up, it can't cut anymore. It's like taking a piece of sandpaper and running it across an oily wood like Cocobolo. Cocobolo will load up your sandpaper in a heartbeat. And then once the sandpaper is loaded up, it's not cutting. So, like I said, last night I pulled out my plate glass and stick powder. I used 2 grits, 60-90 grit and a 220 grit. So I used the 60-90 on the coarse sides of my my crystallines, the coarse crystallines, and then took out any major damage with that. My stones are in pretty good shape now. I didn't have to, you know, like correct any big dishes that I needed the 36 grit powder for. And then the fine sides of the crystallines, Norton Fine India, a couple of, I think I had 3 or 4 soft Arkansas stones. Did those, finished them up with a 220 grit powder. And then ended up doing some rope cutting tests and everything. And here's what I found. So I was able to duplicate that really crisp, aggressive edge that I get off the DMTs and the Smiths. I was able to duplicate that on pretty much every one of these stones here. So, well, I'll show them to you here in a minute. Not the coarse crystalline, but the fine crystalline, the soft Dans. I've got no, this was sold as a hard arc from Natural Whetstone Company. I've also got a soft from the same company. I was able to get it with that one. The Fine India, a Lansky, really nice Lansky soft arc. A Smith soft arc, and well, maybe that was all I had out. But anyway, so what I found is that your lapping is everything. Okay, so when you go to lap or condition that stone on your plate glass, what I found was, so I've got 36 grit, 60/90 grit, so it's the same container but 2 grits. 220 grit and 600 grit. The 600 grit, that is too fine for me for the soft Arkansas stones. That does work really good on your translucent and black stones, but not so much for the edge that I'm after. But that 220 grit, seems to be a really nice balance on the face of the stone. Now, once you select, let's say you take, let's say you found this, well, you probably wouldn't find an old Lansky, or maybe you would. Let's say you found this old Lansky at a flea market or something, right? And it was all gummed up, it had a little bit of dish to it and everything. Use your 36 grit to flatten it, right? Then you use your 60-90 grit to get rid of the 36 grit scratches and to kind of get everything where it needs to be, and then go ahead and knock your corners off with that 60-90. Okay, then go to your 220 grit. Now, with the 220 grit, you go ahead and you get rid of the 60-90 scratches. I say scratches, they're not really scratches, but you'll be able to feel the different texture in the stone when you're done. But you go ahead and do a really good job with a 220, right? Now, before you say you're done, go ahead and wash off your plate glass, wash off your stone, wash that off into a trash can, not into your sink, because all that grit is not so good there. But anyway, so wash everything up, put some very fresh, very fresh 220 grit sick powder, and then very, very lightly condition the stone with that. See, what happens is that sick powder, while it's cutting the stone, it's also getting broke down, all right? And it's getting, the particles are kind of dull, or they're getting kind of dull. So, kind of like river rocks, I mean, if you go into a creek or a river and you pick up a rock, you'll never find one that's got a whole bunch of sharp corners in it. Not if it's been there for very long. As it keeps rolling around in the water, all the sharp corners get knocked off. Well, we want those sharp corners. Those sharp corners are what's going to make the stone cut the steel aggressively and efficiently. So finish off, a dozen circles or figure eights or whatever on fresh 220 grit. Then go ahead and wash that stone off and put it to use. What'll happen is, or at least what's happened with what I've seen, is that leaves the surface of the stone to where it almost works like diamonds. It's not quite as hard or as efficient as the diamonds are. Okay, so well, actually, we'll just sharpen a knife right quick and I'll show you. Let's see. We'll go with this one. All right, so this edge right here, looking at it, I mean, it's dull. It needs sharpening and everything, but we don't need to go to the coarse side. So we're going to go to the, these two are, well, you can't see. Okay, so these two are the same stone. They're the Norton crystalline coarse fine, and they're the jumbos. This one is a really thick one. I just bought it not too long ago. This one is an old one, and it's been lapped and used quite a bit. Heck, I had a 1/4-inch divot in the middle of it back when I was using it. So we're going to go ahead and just rough in our edge here. A lot of times on my sharpening videos, I show how to start with the coarse side, a very, very neglected edge, and then go all the way through to, a finished edge. Okay, so I've got a burr right there on that side now, and it's kind of a medium one, so we're going to go ahead and put it to the other side. Okay, now it's a much lighter burr already. Need a little bit more work there at the tip. But you don't have to start at the coarse side every single time. If you do that, you'll just wear your knife out faster. But typically when I'm showing, doing a sharpening video, I want you to go ahead and, it'd be like, okay, well, this is start to finish. Well, if you pick up a knife and it's not bad enough to need the coarse side, start with your, your fine crystalline stone and then go to your finished stone. So let's say, well, the Dan's is right next to it. Okay, so now this one right here, this is the soft arc from Dan's whetstone. and I just lapped it yesterday with 220 grit stick powder, or down to 220 grit stick powder. And then remember, I finished on very fresh 220 grit stick powder. So like, got it all the way down to 220. It was feeling really, really smooth. Washed everything up, and then went put fresh 220 powder down, and only did like maybe a dozen circles or figure eights, something like that, so that the surface of the stone is cut with very fresh 220 grit powder, which leaves the surface, or the when you run your finger across it, you feel that it's very nice and aggressive there. All right, so we got the burr on this side, so we're going to go ahead and swap it over. And you can feel that, you can feel the stone cutting. It's not like some old stone that's, worn down so smooth that it's like glass. If it feels like glass and you're trying to, to do a working edge, you're going to be there a long, long time. Okay, so we got the burr moved over. Now let's lighten it up. So now I'm lightening my pressure up considerably, and still holding roughly the same angle. Everybody gets all worked up on their angles. They don't have to be exact. As long as they're pretty close, I mean within a couple of degrees. Okay, now I feel that burr getting lighter and lighter. Okay, now here's the other trick, all right? So if you're in a production sharpening type deal like I am, okay, so what I'm going to do today is just to play around with some of these stones, because I feel like playing with stones, is I'm going to sharpen my kitchen knife set. Okay, I'm a knife maker, so I have a lot of kitchen knives. I'm always testing out different things, different edges, all that kind of stuff. Then you've got my boy's kitchen knife. That's the one that he likes the most of the time, and it is just dull as shit because he doesn't like to sharpen it. Even got my wife's Chicago cutlery set in here that we bought right after we got married. So I'll sharpen all those, plus all those, plus while I have the stones out, I'll go ahead and sharpen my pocket knives. So that's a lot of knives to sharpen. So what I did was, that's why I've got everything set up here. So coarse side, fine side, and then I'll finish edges off on different things just to kind of play around and keep it exciting. So anyway, all right, so we just worked our edge. We got our burr prepared on that Dan's soft Arkansas, right? Now before we finish this edge off and do our micro bevels, we need to clean this stone, okay? Because this stone has got bits and pieces of the burr that's been, weakened. Some of that burr is already starting to come off, I guarantee it, and it's in this stone, right? Or on the top of this stone. So what we can do is flood it with a lot of oil. Now I'm just using mineral oil here. This is just a container, wooden bamboo oil, and then I buy mineral oil by the gallon at the local farm and ranch supply house. So flood that stone really good and get all them steel particles off the top. Now very, very lightly we're going to shear that burr off. So if our sharpening angle, that's flat. If our sharpening angle was about like that, we're going to shear that burr off at about like that. So an extra 10-15 degrees higher. Okay, so very, very lightly on a clean stone, and see, I felt that burr move across, and there's not much of it left. Now here with the diamonds, You usually only have to do maybe 2 or 3 passes on each side, and that burr will be sheared off, and it'll be real nice and clean. These stones, it seems like it takes an extra pass or 2. Now also, I'm not sure if it's going to matter a whole lot. I would kind of think that it would. But this knife right here is 440C stainless at, I don't know that I've ever tested the Rockwell on these, but it's a pretty high hardness. I would guess, high 50s, at least. My 1095 and my 52-100, both of those I run in the low 60s. And it doesn't have any problems cutting that. Some of the newer super steels, that I've heard of and never even worked with, it might not cut those as aggressively, or you might have to take more passes. That's one of the things that diamonds are really nice about. Alright, so that burr is completely gone now. I don't feel it. There's no light getting reflected. Let's clean the edge up a little bit. One of the things I do to test, like when I'm running through all these, is see if it'll catch hair on my beard. And it is. And it's got that nice toothy feel to it too. But you want to check, make sure it shaves or catches hair on both sides. See there how it's just popping them hairs off? Just as soon as they touch them. If it shaves in one direction and doesn't shave in the other direction, that means you've got some burr left over. So anyway, so that's what I was playing around with last night. So the biggest trick to making these oil stones cut like diamonds, or close enough that it really doesn't matter. And here's the thing, is that those diamonds get mighty dang expensive. Maybe for a hobbyist, if you're just buying one set, you decide you want the coarse, the medium, and the fine, you buy a set of those every 10 years. I go through one of them DMT 8x3s, every couple of months. I usually go through at least 2 or 3 of them a year. This right here is just the last couple of years worth of diamonds. These DMT plates right here at 50, 60 bucks a piece. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another one 6 from the same outfit. That's quite a bit of money tied up in diamonds there. And they're honestly kind of like long-lived sandpaper. Because you buy them, you use them, and then when they dull up, or they wear out, or the diamonds get stripped off, or whatever, you throw the things away. Or you use them for flattening water stones or something like that. A stone like this, heck, that was, I want to say that was 60 bucks or so from sharpeningsupplies.com. That right there, even for a guy like me, that's at least a decade or 2 worth of sharpening, And then these soft Arkansas stones, man, I don't know if I'll ever wear one of these out. Even dressing it every, because they don't dish very much, but they do kind of glaze over, and then the surface needs recut. So heck, recutting one of those, let's say you get 50, 60 knives out of one, and then you have to spend 5 minutes on the sick powder, just with 220 grit, to clean it back up, and then you're good to go for a while. Even this one, a really nice Dan's, which is supposed to be top of the line, I think this was $70 or $80, and you get the hard black side for sharpening straight razors too. Anyway, so that was just what I was doing yesterday, was playing around with sharpening stones and found out a couple of things. So one more thing, remember when I flooded the surface of that soft arc with oil so that it would float everything out? Now, as I want to do that again to that stone before I finish off the next edge, because since I sheared off the burr that was on this knife onto this stone, now there's bits and pieces of that burr on top of the stone. I think that's another place where diamonds kind of work out okay, because I think the peaks of the diamonds, so if you look at the surface of this stone, it looks like a mountain range when you're up in an airplane. You know, you got all these peaks and valleys and everything. Well, I think those diamonds, the distance between the top of the peaks and the bottom of the valleys is greater than the distance, the tops of the mountains and the bottoms of the valleys on a soft arc or a fine crystalline or a fine India. So keeping the surface of that stone flushed with oil, or I know some guys like using Dawn and water, or heck, earlier today I tried it running it under the sink. No kidding, I had you know, warm tap water coming up underneath the sink, and I had the stone tilted towards me so that it would it'd constantly be flushing. And for that finishing stroke, you know, I mean, you're not putting hardly any pressure at all, you know, the weight of the knife, you know, and it's constantly getting flushed with water. That worked really good too. But just keep the surface of that stone freshly cut and you know, clear of all your swarf. And boy, they sure seem to be cutting really nice. I know this batch of knives right here, it's going to be the first batch of knives that I'm going to ship out that's going to have soft Arkansas edges on them. And it'll be kind of interesting to see what everybody thinks. Anyway, again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it helped you out with your sharpening. And even if it didn't, you know, time spent sharpening and talking about sharpening is always fun. Anyway, we'll talk to you later.